The last 6 months I've been traveling the world, seeing new places, shooting videos and images with my trusty Sony A7R III. I've been putting it through the test of freezing Arctic temperatures and blistering heat in the Sahara desert. So, does it live up to its $3,000 price tag? What's up everyone, my name is Simon. I'm a traveler and a video creator, and I also shoot quite a few stills for Instagram. And I've been testing out this bad boy the last 6 months, and I want to share the positives and the negatives of this full-frame Sony mirrorless camera. First and foremost, I'll be comparing this quite a lot to my other Sony camera, which is the A7R III. I've been having that camera for quite a few years now, so I'm pretty familiar with the Sony system, and that's also why I chose to upgrade for another Sony camera. So this is my go-to camera these days. First and all, the battery life is a significant improvement on the Sony A7R III compared to the smaller batteries in the A6000 series. I mean, it's just so powerful, even though it has to power the bigger sensor and the in-body stabilization. It just keeps on lasting for almost a day, and it's just so much better compared to the previous ones. I did think I had to buy at least 2 or 3 batteries for this camera, as I have 6, 7 to my other camera, but these chunks just keep on lasting, so it's so convenient. And of course, with these cameras you can just plug in a USB power bank at the sides, and you can be shooting for days, which I have done, so it's quite good. I also want to talk about using this camera in the cold conditions. I did when I filmed the Arctic Lights, or the Aurora, up in northern Norway. It was, I guess, minus 15 Celsius, and we went out in the middle of the night to shoot. This guy just was a champion, to be honest. Didn't lose any power whatsoever, and it acted like a normal day with okay temperatures. My Sony A6300, on the other hand, it just decided to die after 20 minutes. So I can testify that this one does a much better job due to its improved battery. Of course, as you probably know, Sony cameras do very good 4K, has a snappy autofocus and good slow motion capabilities. This one you can do 120 frames per second with. However, the 4K is somewhat limited. You don't get a 60 FPS option filming 4K, but the 4K you do get, which is 25 or 24 FPS, is very good, and gives you a lot of leeway in post. You can crop in and zoom in on the things you want to highlight. Another very cool feature, I think, with this camera is the crop mode. The great thing about this is that a prime lens will serve 2 purposes. This is a 90mm Sony 2.8 macro lens, and if I just press the custom 3 button, which I have programmed to be the crop mode, I will get another focal length, and it's just so convenient. You can just do it by the click of the button. Remember, you can't do this while filming, so you need to do it in between takes. And when you pair this to the clear image zoom, which you also can program to whatever button you want, you end up with a prime lens that can be so convenient. I mean, you can have a 50mm prime get to be like a 85mm equivalent with a crop mode, And from there you can even go 1.5 times clear image zoom. It's not too bad of a quality loss either. It's not like a digital zoom at all, but there will be some loss in quality, but it's not really noticeable, at least not for like YouTube compression stuff. The clear image zoom will only work on the Sony lenses, so that's something to keep in mind. Another big improvement on the Sony A7R III compared to my other A6300 is the back joystick, which is super convenient for finding your focus point and just navigating through the menus. In combination with using the viewfinder and a flexible spot for the autofocus, you can just toggle it on the joystick, which is so handy. I really don't know how I did my other camera before I got this one. So the joystick is a very nice feature. Another thing I want to bring up is the startup time compared to the other Sony camera. It's so much faster to start up and it's ready to go in the blink of an eye. So we're doing a lot of road trips and suddenly there is something by the road you want to film, you know? So having a quick startup time is crucial in those situations. The viewfinder, just going to talk a bit about this one as well, because it's so bright, so responsive. Unlike a DSLR, you'll actually see the inputs you do real time here, so you know if your exposure is going to be okay. And like in bright sunlight, it's just so bright and it won't fail you. It's high resolution. The viewfinder is excellent. Of course, another thing you'll get with a full frame sensor like this one and the Sony cameras is the amazing low light capability. I have done a few tests on this, both in the crop mode and the full frame option. As my findings go, I think you can bump it up to 12,800 on the ISO before you start seeing like a bad grainy image. But I mean, that's quite good. And if you have a fast lens, you can almost see in the dark with this guy. So if you're thinking about the A7S II as your low light beast, this isn't too far behind. So really convenient. And often I just leave my ISO in the auto mode, because I know if I limit the upper limit to like 10,000 or 12,800, I won't have too much grain in my images, which I of course appreciate. Another thing I want to bring up is the overheating issue that at least my Sony A6300 had. I haven't had this once with this camera, even though I shot some 4K footage in the Sahara desert, where the temperature of course is super high. It handled it just fine, so I can't really bring that up as a negative. Another feature which I really like is the option to do the silent shooting. Of course, several cameras have this option these days, but it's just super convenient when you're like in a very quiet environment and you don't want to bother anyone. And like the shutter mechanism sound is it's not loud, but it's noticeable. So having the option to just go completely silent is super nice. And it has proven to be a valuable asset several times. Of course, another upgrade on the Sony A7R III is the dual SD card slots. It's somewhat limited, XC2 on both slots. It's only on the slot number 1 you actually will have the XC2 option. So that's like somewhat a limitation, but it's not too bad. I mean, you can have a memory card with like 128 gigabytes and you'll be just fine. So, and the new like door here on the side is just so sturdy and seems very well engineered. And another feature I use all the time is the customizable menu you have on the screen here of the A7R III. It's super nice compared to my other Sony camera, which is not too customizable, at least not on the menu settings. And you know, Sony get a lot of criticism for their menu system, which is, yeah, I get it. It's not the best, but at least you have the option to do your own menu. And you know, I just put in like different frame rates, 4K slow motion. You put in your your audio levels, all the things you use on a regular basis, just put it in there. And when you combine this to the custom 1, 2, 3 and 4 button, and even other buttons which you can customize as you want, the options are just endless. So it feels like a really professional camera. The autofocus on this one is excellent. It is very snappy, especially with the native Sony lenses. I do have a Sigma 18-35 1.8 with the MC11 adapter, and I'm not getting the best results with that lens and adapter combination. I feel the engine, the focus engine, is a bit noisy as well, so I tend not to use it with any autofocus settings. So I just use it as a manual lens, especially for photographing. But these native Sony lenses are super snappy, and of course you have the eye autofocus function and the face detection as well. So it just sticks, even though you like turn away from the camera, it can't see your eye. It will snap just back when you turn around. So the autofocus is very good. I rely a lot on it as I just do vlogs and travel. I use this primarily as a video camera. You know, you have inputs like the headphone jack, you have the microphone jack, you have the HDMI, USB-C. It's a very well made camera also for videos. But of course, the main feature of this one, it's more like geared towards the photographer's world. Yeah, the raw files you're getting from this is just excellent. The dynamic range is so good. The amount of things you can just lift up from the shadows or like from the highlights in post it's very good. So I'm super happy to have a camera both for video and for photos. So it keeps my traveling kit at the minimum, and I'm always confident I'll get both the good images and the video that I need. So it's just a deadly combination. You should mind that the uncompressed RAW files are humongous. I shoot both JPEG and RAW, and taking one still image often leads to like 100 megabyte RAW file and about 25 megabyte JPEG file. So it'll eat through your memory card. Just be aware of this. Recently I've been doing the compressed RAW files, which will at least half that file size. Editing in Lightroom afterwards just keeps it a much more speedy workflow for me, because my computer can handle those files better, and the file size of course is lower. So you should test out both the uncompressed and the compressed RAW file, and I think you'll like them both. So you have 10 frames a second when you do this burst mode. It's just phenomenal, so you won't miss out on any moments. The size compared to DSLR is, of course, it's a smaller camera, which means it's better for like gimbal use and just overall weight. It doesn't eat up as much space in your backpack, and I often just use this hand strap and I just walk with it like this, because the weight isn't too bad. I've grown at least used to it now, so the form factor is a key element, of course, when you go mirrorless. Now we're getting the the Sigma E-mount lenses, which I'm so stoked to try. But you should take into consideration that the Sony glass is very expensive. Of course, you want to go native glass when you can, but it's very expensive. So it's a welcome change that the Sigma lenses are now doing the native E-mount system mount. So you'll save the adapter in between, and the autofocus will be better. So I'm looking forward to try out those lenses, and super happy to see if they perform similar to the native Sony mount or the Sony lenses. Let's talk a little bit about the negatives of this camera. As I mentioned, I am comparing this to my Sony A6300 a lot, and one of the few things I really miss out on is the built-in time-lapse function. It does have the S and Q function, but in my experience it doesn't work just as seamless as a built-in time-lapse function. So it's a bit of a hassle. I often just leave it filming, to be honest, and then I speed ramp it in post. But that's something I would really like the Sony to have. So please come up with some solution, Sony, because that'll be a game changer for me at least. Another thing people like to criticize Sony about is, of course, the screen. As you can see, it comes out on the side here, but and you can tilt it like down and up if you want to shoot from the top and down. But you won't have the ability to flip it out on the side to do the vlogging stuff. So that's a kind of a limitation. I've grown used to it, to be honest, but it's definitely something to consider, and I hope Sony will be launching the flip out LCD on their professional mirrorless cameras sooner rather than later. So please, Sony, you should fix this screen. And while we're at the topic of the screen, even though it has the touchscreen functionality, I find it just to be a gimmick, to be honest. I don't really use it at all. The limitations are so extensive. You can't navigate through the system using your the touchscreen. You can scroll through and zoom in on your images, but to be honest, it's not like a responsive of a smartphone, so it's a kind of a miserable experience. So the touchscreen, I'm not a big fan. It's a nice feature. You can get your focus correct and just press where you want it to be. But I mean, it's not something that I use at all, really. As it stands now, it's not really helpful, to me at least. If you're going to use this for video, is that there's no recording indication on the front of the camera. So if you hold the camera towards your face and you want to do vlog sort of things, you won't be able to confirm that the camera is actually recording. So you will need to be quite aware of doing the correct record input before you start vlogging and filming yourself, because as I said, there's just no way to know if it records. So it's a kind of a limitation, and I'd put it on a negative side, of course. Another thing which I have to mention as a negative is, of course, the introduction that Sony made of the Sony A7 III, which is just an amazing camera and has a whole other price point than the Sony A7R III. And you're getting so many of the features you do in the A7R III in the A7 III, and you'll save a lot of money just going for the A7 III. Of course, this is a bit better, at least for photos, and you have a few features on this camera which you won't find on the A7 III, but it's so similar. It's got the same great battery, the same great autofocus system. Low light capability is of course great. The frame rates are the same. So it's in stabilization. I mean, the list goes on. So it's kind of something just Sony made this negative, I guess, by introducing the Sony A7 III. So you should consider checking if the Sony A7 III has the features that you'll be needing. But the A7 III has, of course, the added bonus of being an even better stills camera. So it's absolutely something to consider if you are looking into buying a full-frame Sony camera. Another negative is, as I already mentioned, you don't get any 4K 60 on this one. I mean, Panasonic has it on their GH5 system, so kind of weird Sony not having it in this one. To be honest, I don't use that much 4K anyway. It just slows down my workflow so tremendous. So I won't complain, but it would have been a nice feature. I know a lot of creators would strive for having 4K 60 in their productions. Another thing I need to mention about the LCD, the the brightness isn't too good, and the LCD screen itself easily gets scratches when you throw it in your camera bag. Or so please take care of your screen. If it breaks, it's a pricey repair, so that should be mine.